right. Well, welcome to the Qredible broadcast at the end of January here. Today, I'm so excited that we have Colin Slager, who is our guest on today's broadcast. Let me tell you a little bit about Colin. He's the editor-in-chief at, now, how do you say it? 3CHI?
3Chi.
3Chi.
Like,
Right,
like
3Chi.
your chakras, that. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. That's good. 3Chi is a cannabis company that specializes in hemp-derived and novel cannabinoid products. Within his role, he's responsible for increasing SEO and website traffic, assisting in product launches, and projecting the voice of the company to its consumers. With the gray areas of regulations in cannabis, it's paramount that he stays up to date on local and federal laws, as well as proper language to ensure all published works by 3Chi are compliant and avoid any missteps. Colin also has expertise in the area of health and wellness and is on a mission to help incorporate cannabis into athletic performance and recovery. Colin is also an avid podcaster, recently surpassing 200 episodes where he promotes his insights and journey along with his co-host and countless guests. So welcome, Colin. We're excited about this convo today.
Thank you. Me too. I appreciate you guys having me on today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great to have you. And we're going to be talking about marketing chi today, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Compliant marketing chi. That's
compliant.
important.
Always compliant. Yes.
That's good.
So everybody knows Brian Fitzpatrick, my esteemed the chairman and CEO of Qredible. And, Brian will be leading out the conversation. But Brian, I kind of wanted to start actually with you and just quickly kind of recap. You were at an event this week in Louisville, and you had mentioned to me kind of on the side that there was a whole kind of working group around cannabis marketing right now. So I thought that might actually be a really good context to set. And then definitely want to hear all about Colin's perspective as he's so involved in it.
Yeah, there's a huge work group effort going on cannabis marketing because, one of the problems that we have, and I'm sure Colin's going to touch on that, I know we're going to talk about it today, is that every state has different guidelines, as it relates to what you can and cannot say. So what ASTM is doing, which is where I was, it was committee week out at ASTM in Louisville. And they have a number, the D37 committee is specifically the cannabis work group. And what they do is they break down all sorts of different areas for different standards. I mean, everything from labeling and packaging to, good manufacturing practices to banking. And they had a very, very big work group working on marketing. So, the goal is that hopefully that these standards actually can drive the states to get their stuff together and sort of unify on specific standards. And also when this does go legal at a federal level, it becomes a good framework for a legal, a federal program for advertising and marketing.
Mm-hmm.
That's such helpful context. I think it's, Colin, I'm sure as a marketer and as somebody who oversees content, this is a cause near and dear to your heart, just being able to set some kind of quantifiable standard that people are operating by.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about kind of your experience in content, especially with cannabis marketing, and how you, got into that maybe, and then what you really do day to day and the challenges you've seen.
Absolutely. So I first got into cannabis in 2020 during COVID. So I had friends that started a CBD topical cream, but they inserted it with glutathione, and they were able to nanosize it because glutathione, so that's our body's natural kind of master antioxidant. We just don't make a lot of it. So typically people will do a glutathione IV. So you need it intravenously to absorb into the body, but they were able to nanosize it. They use small diamonds to nanosize their topical where they could get that glutathione and the CBD through the dermis, through the top layer of the skin. So we saw a whole lot different effects on people, from pain management to sleep to just overall health and wellness. Some women used it as an eye cream at night. So with that glutathione, we were able to really change some lives. Unfortunately, that company did not last, but that gave me my taste of, kind of the cannabis industry. So that's where I saw how much it can really help people. It's people hear cannabis, they think just, it's a bunch of people want to legally get high. That's the farthest thing from it. And I got a firsthand experience of how powerful this plant can be and how much it can help people. So then I started marketing for my buddy's beverage company. He had a CBD energy drink. He didn't have no sugar, no calories, all like monk fruit, stevia, things like that. So he's trying to really clean up the beverage space. And so I started loving that, and then eventually landed with 3Chi as their editor. So I just kind of kept, hitting these stepping stones because I fell in love with the industry. So I come from a health and fitness background and wanted to help people with that. And now I can incorporate cannabis within those programs too.
That's awesome. Health and fitness, by the way, one of our guys who works for us, Drew Harris, he is a what do you call that? The Iron Man. So he did Iron Man last year
for him.
And a few of us from the company went out to see him and cheer him on. And he talks about CBD and how it was really helping in his recovery and all that. So here we are making claims.
Which in my notes, I have never to do that. This is all alleged and potential.
So we've just illustrated handily how easy it is to slip into that.
Yep.
So give us a feel for that, Colin, as somebody who, organizes content, oversees content production. I mean, I know all too well how hard it is to rein in messaging.
Right.
How in the world do you market cannabis in a safe and compliant way?
Very passively. So all the language, like you can't say anything definitively. You can't say, this will relieve pain, aches and pains. It has to be, this has the potential to relieve physical discomfort, physical aches and pains, joint discomfort, things like that. So it has to always be very passive language, which at times can kind of be a pain. Like, I know what this can do, but anecdotal isn't good enough for the government. And just last month, there was a company, East Fork Cultivars, another cannabis company, got a warning letter from the FDA. So like they are on it, white on rice. They're going to get you if you start making claims. They also referenced their product helping with COVID. They referenced breast cancer. So those are like two of the biggest no-nos. Is like, don't even say chemo-induced nausea. That's a common one I'll see. Like, just say like upset stomach. So in terms of kind of avoiding those pitfalls, it's very passive language. It's potential benefits. This is never a medical claim. So I always have disclaimers as well. Like always talk to your doctor before adding any cannabis products into your regimen. But yeah, there are no claims at all. And I don't even say anything about cancer, like whatsoever. Don't even say the word, nothing even close to that, or COVID. And so they even had in their warning letter, because they said more studies and research is needed. That was also a problem, which I think is a little much. But I think because they already talked about cancer, COVID, they were to be an example. So it's like, all right, now we're going to nitpick on just if you say more research is needed, which is something I say. So our CEO, he's talking to me. He's like, hey, I know you've just said there's not enough research. We can't even say that. Well, I'm not saying cancer or COVID either. So those are the things that if you want to get a letter from the FDA really quick, reference those couple illnesses, diseases, whatever.
Yeah. And by the way, one of the things that Qredible does as we monitor all these different brands out there, we are tied into the FDA. So we can tell whether a letter is being issued. So as soon as it comes up, it gets alerted into the Qredible platform. Now, not that we're big fans of seeing a lot of those, but they're doing what they have to do to try to keep, consumers safe, which I think is important. And the other parallel to that, by the way, is we've seen, class action lawsuits going on. Now, those things have been quelled because many of the courts have basically put stays on those rulings. And the reason they put stays on those rulings is because they're waiting to see what the federal guidelines are going to be from the FDA on CBD and hemp. So when that comes around, then they can go back to the lawsuits that were filed and say, okay, you can open up now and see if they violate these federal lawsuits. So even though there's been sort of a stay, a pause, if you will, of these class action lawsuits, they will come back as there's more guidance, because that's what the judges are saying. We need to see more specific guidance on these, but it's really still a dangerous area, as you said, for the FDA, and warning letters and fines, fees, and penalties will go out.
Sure. Yeah. And if you have a heads up on that, we'll exchange contact info. So if anything ever comes down that I need to know about, you'll let me know.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're well, we got to get you in Credible so you can
Yeah.
the system will let you know
There
automatically.
you
Okay.
go.
Love it. Love it. Perfect.
When it comes to, speaking out of turn, there's obviously the big penalty, which could possibly be, right, these kind of letters that scare you and,
Sure.
the big guys swinging their authority. But, from a marketing perspective, have you ever seen any repercussions? I'm thinking in terms of SEO. I mean, I know right now we're still so limited on TikTok as far as
Mhm.
and can't say, and
Yeah.
used to try to like squeeze it in with like coded hashtags, right? That were like
Right.
low key referencing it, but not overt. And then you just get shadow banned. Like,
100%.
what do you see happening and what do you think is going to happen?
So I see that with my TikTok as well. You can't even say cannabis or that it's only education. So I'm trying to mess with that and see how I can skirt around that, because I've seen other videos where people talk hemp and cannabis and they have tons of use. So there's something I need to still figure out. But I mean, we've had our Twitter account temporarily suspended because we had actual like a vape oil showing. Um, so depending on the platform, you can't have a device, you can't show the actual product. Maybe you can only show packaging, maybe you can't even show that much. Instagram, you always want to say there's nothing for sale. Like you'll see pictures of any sort of cannabis product, but you can't buy it from there. So those things, you just have to take certain measures. But with SEO, if we keyword stuff, so usually whatever whether it's a website copy or article, you have a certain percentage of all of your characters that you want to be based on your keywords. So if I'm writing something on Delta 8, I don't want to say Delta 8 more than usually 1.5 to 3% of my entire article. Going past that, you start to keyword stuff. Google recognizes that it's as spam, and you'll get your content pushed all the way down. So you also want to avoid that. So that's one thing I've seen with SEO, but we haven't had that issue as much as just an accidental social media post that the platform did not like, or the guideline. Sometimes it's a moving needle. I don't know, Twitter, X, it's been a lot of changeover. So who knows who's catching up on what rules that they need to abide by, we need to abide by. So that's the worst I've seen lately on our end. But yeah, there's a handful of things that can go wrong pretty quick too, and you might not even mean to do it.
Yeah, I mean one of the things that Credible offers is a compliant e-commerce platform, multi-tenant e-commerce for wholesale, retail, and franchise, whatever it is. But it's designed specifically for the CBD hemp side, or was originally designed specifically for that.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we're constantly in this discussion with clients is, when they convert over to our platform, they don't want to go backwards on SEO. Right. So we gotta maintain where they are, and then we have to advance them. And because of the performance of our tech, we're able to advance them many times. But it's a very careful sort of line you have to walk, because these
Mm-hmm.
keywords, I mean, let's face it, consumers, they don't know the naughty words that they shouldn't be saying.
Right. Yeah.
But yet they do know what they're looking for out of these products, right? They
Absolutely.
they
Yeah.
want to relieve pain, they want to relieve anxiety, they want to do all these things, right? But they're questioning, they're typing all this stuff. We just can't say it.
Right.
So, what are some of the best practices, sort of around, a good keyword for CBD? Like, for example, if we had to work around anxiety, how, what are some good
Sure.
best practices there?
So, and Joe, I sent this to you to send to people as well. I created a table of terms, stuff that we stay away from and good alternatives. So the first one on the list is anxiety, which you'll see in a lot of cannabis content: reduce inflammation, anti-inflammatory, reduce anxiety, which I think for the most part is okay for a lot of companies. We just try to be a little extra careful. So we might say reduce anxious feelings. It is how we kind of get around the anxiety. So someone reading that, they can say, oh, anxious feelings, that's what I'm looking for, really. So that's something we'll kind of work with that. Anything depression related, improve mood. But I still use that carefully. But uplift your mood a little bit, make you a little more energetic, a little more present, things like that. We talked about the nausea, just say stomach issues, upset stomach. Chronic pain, we don't use chronic at all. So that's just aches and pains, physical discomfort. So there's a few things that we have had to work around because they were things I used to write for Koi CBD as well. And I was like, hey, I used to use all these terms. And they're like, well, we want to be a little extra careful here. So that's, anxiety, we just say reduce anxious feelings and kind of tweak it a little bit.
Yeah, and it sort of stresses the importance, I think, of content, right? I mean, I know Joy's always drilling in me of how important content is and content marketing, and she's very good at it. But one of the things that I seem to really look at is that if you're providing educational content, you can almost get the benefit of those keywords if you're talking, the question, does CBD help with anxious feelings? Does CBD help with anxiety? So it's more of a question and a research. I mean, does that help skirt around it if it's more of a blog post or research item?
Yeah, so I don't think that really hinders our content too much in terms of ranking on Google with a search of will CBD reduce my anxiety? Because within that, whatever article that they kind of promote, there's still going to be other keywords associated with that. So CBD, then you might have CBD topical, CBD gummies, CBD tinctures, all within that same article. So I use Surfer SEO, software called Surfer SEO. And so they might have some CBD relevant to any sort of product you can imagine that contains that. So I'm still going to capture a lot of those big keywords and terms. I'm just not blatantly saying this product will reduce anxiety.
Right. And I think, you talked about sort of the FDA is the one who finds these things. The FTC is the one that enforces these things relative to fines, fees, and penalties. Right. So the FTC is sort of the enforcement agency, and they have fined companies up to $50,000 per violation for unsubstantiated claims. And that's a lot of money for a company per violation. And when you read some of these letters, it's not just one violation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. And we're also seeing, like just recently, I think it was in September, in New Jersey on the cannabis side, on the marijuana side, the Cannabis Regulatory Commission in September issued $150,000 between two multi-state cannabis operators. And, they were multiples of what the professionals of the CRC staff even had recommended. They had gone above and beyond. And one company was 100,000, the other company was 50,000. And it was basically for violations in claims and advertising and those sort of things. So it's, what we're talking about, folks, are serious. And I think sometimes when you talk to some of these brands, they're like, they sort of slough it off. It's going to be okay until the love letter comes from the, from the FDA, and it's like, oops, maybe we're not going to be okay.
Yeah, East Fork got theirs 3 days before Christmas, so they don't care when it happens. It'll get found.
Yeah, there you go. It's a nice little gift under the tree.
Yeah,
and I think one of the things that comes to mind for me is like, as marketers, especially in a smaller company or in a startup, we often rely on networks of freelance talent and vendors, right? Like we don't have a built, you're not going to have a CMO and an 8-person marketing team in a startup, most likely. So, I think it becomes even more challenging. So we've kind of got this like lexicon issue where it's like, how do we use the language? Well, we can't advertise on Meta. We can't post on TikTok. Like our arms are tied in a lot of ways. So we already feel these limitations. And then we kind of have to float out to vendors and outsource some of the work. And it's like, I've seen in my kind of research now, there are marketing agencies that are starting to be launched or starting to specialize in cannabis, but it's not like it's super common. So if you're going on Upwork to find freelance writers, like you have no way of knowing if they have any idea about any of this. And there's no like course they can go take. Like,
yeah, it's tough to find that. It's a very niche experience. So that's where if you're hiring freelancers, which I've done my fair share of freelancing, and it just worked out that I had already been doing cannabis work, but that's where either you have to really educate them and give them the resources, or you just have to kind of fine tune and go through every single line of their copy to make sure, so it's almost like you doing it too, to where it's a little more cumbersome. So ideally, if you can find someone that is, experienced with that kind of work, that's the best. But other than that, I'd say within like a contract with them, you have to have creative control. You have final approval, can't give them access to putting up a new blog directly on your site. That's where you'll just want to really oversee that a little more with fine tooth comb, rather than them writing about something where they don't have to be as compliant and, with heavy penalties. So I think that can, get a little murky, but if they have enough resources, education, give them a few examples. If they're a pretty good writer, they can pick up on it quick. One thing I would say is maybe have a separate Google Drive for those freelancers where they can access everything that they might need. They don't have any, secrets of the trade, no sensitive information or anything, and just make sure you have final say in any content that goes out.
If only there were some guides coming out from somebody.
I was going to say, we need to, in addition to all these resources Colin's going to give our audience, we need to like launch a course. Like, let's talk about that. Cannabis marketing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the question that I think I get asked, and I don't specialize in cannabis necessarily because, with Qredible, we're a SaaS platform and obviously we're in the cannabis space, but I don't have a background in cannabis marketing. But a lot of the questions I think that marketers get when they go into these organizations is like, but what about X, right? So if you're like, okay, and I'm not talking about Twitter, like what about this example, right? So what about this example of people who are literally putting up Instagram posts of getting high? What about this example of this website that is literally talking about curing cancer? Like, and you realize that people have taken shortcuts. Are they not getting penalized? Like what's happening? Like there are still these like very visible examples of people who are out there doing that. And it's like, what do you make of that? I don't know.
That's
getting around it.
That's an I don't know. I kind of live by if you do anything long enough. So they might have gotten away with it longer than other companies have. And it just comes down to, is it worth the risk for you? Do you have so much money in the bank where if you get a penalty, you're really not worried about it, where your mass marketing is hitting so many people that it's a spit in the bucket to pay a few fines to have that reach? But as we talked earlier, if you're a startup, in this saturated market, you can't afford a $50,000 penalty, let alone 2 or 3 because of one blog. So that's where I don't know exactly how some get missed. It's going to happen though. Like no organization is going to catch all the bad actors. And
Colin, you mentioned something important that reminds me. Oftentimes I talk about my regulatory tech past from the mortgage industry. And I can remember talking to various mortgage CEOs that said, it's cheaper for me to pay the fines than it is to comply. And, they had, these were companies with substantial capital. But that changed. Because what it ended up happening is as the laws became more significant and as the implosion happened in that industry in 2008, the seminal event that created all the problems, all of a sudden, now the False Claims Act was being used, which is used, by the way, and can be used on the CBD side. All of a sudden, these fines, fees, and penalties were not based on some, it's $50,000 per occurrence, but it's, hey, if we think you can pay, you know what? It's $500,000.
Yeah.
So because what they wanted to do on the mortgage side is the government wanted to make specific examples of the ones who are not paying attention that basically said, you know what, I'll pay the fines. And then all of a sudden, I mean, literally, we had one customer that was hit with $150 million fine from the CFPB. So, and those fines and fees were nowhere near that before. But all of a sudden, when things start going awry and things go bad and the regulations start to get more intense and more mature, then that can happen. They will make an example out of somebody, and we've seen the enforcement action sort of start to heat up, and then it slows down, and then it heats up again.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing, just a last statement on this, I was meeting with a former regulator of another state, and he had said to me that what's going on now on the cannabis side, on the marijuana side, is they're going to start looking at the players that are licensed with them in that state. They're going to be looking at what they're doing in other states as well, because
Yeah.
where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's the way the liquor industry works today, right? So if you're doing naughty things in one state, then they're gonna find out about it. So that's going to become table stakes as well, which is all the more reason to create more of a federal guideline. Like, what is the best practices that meets every state that we can comply with? That is sort of the standard that will cover all these different nuances.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. For, not that we all want tons of regulation, but in this industry, we need some more clear cut ones that define, hey, this is kind of black and white. This is what the penalty is of XYZ action.
Yeah. And one thing I noticed in, I don't know if you saw this, but in Jackson, Mississippi, actually this month, a federal judge just dismissed a lawsuit that was filed by the owner of a medical marijuana dispensary. So the owner of this dispensary sued Mississippi over state regulations that basically censored him from advertising in most forms of media. So this wasn't even a case of he's saying naughty things. This was a case he wasn't allowed to say anything.
Yeah.
Because the regulations were so strict that basically he sued them for basically violating his ability to market his company and exercise free commercial speech. So he was suing them on his First Amendment rights, and it got the judge basically said, no, this is not going to happen. You're not going to win this. Now that dispensary owner is appealing, but it's interesting. So in some cases, it's not about what you're saying. It's about whether you can say it at all.
Sure. Yeah.
Anything. Like, I put a billboard up. Well, that's illegal in Mississippi. You're not allowed to put a billboard up.
Yeah. I think I did see that headline. I didn't dive into it, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that appeal goes. Because if you can't advertise at all, like, now it's how far is it going to go into cutting his business? Then where the laws on that of allowing him to just do business in the state.
Yeah, I mean, it's just crazy. So, Joy, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the resources that Qredible has coming out, and I think we're going to even advance those a little bit more with some of the great stuff that Colin has created, and that's very helpful also.
Yeah, I think, speaking of being able to find guidelines, find standards, Colin's been gracious enough. He sent me some incredible assets as, kind of in the oh no nos. What can't you say? What can you say? Some of these matrices and evaluation criteria he applies. And it's like perfect timing because Monday, Qredible's launching an e-course on cannabis marketing, totally free. Anybody can sign up for it. It's 6 sessions that get delivered to your inbox. And I'm definitely going to talk to Colin about bundling, some of his assets into that so people can gain and benefit from that. But at the end of the day, us enacting good practices in marketing makes good companies money, and, high tides lift all ships. So as much as we can disseminate the ideas of what good practices are like in the world of content and marketing, the more people can grow, right? The more businesses can grow. And so, we've been historically stigmatized. Like, there's a lot to overcome, but marketers are scrappy by nature. We're up for a challenge, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm interested, Colin, love to have you tell everybody kind of how they can get in touch with you. Definitely. I mean, you've got your podcast, you're a great person to follow on LinkedIn. Give us a little spiel of how people can connect with you and learn more.
Sure. Yeah. LinkedIn. You can find me just searching my name on most social medias. Search Colin Slager on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. You can email me as well. I'll give my my kind of health and wellness email. It's Colin, COLIN at optimalfitnessrx.com, just spelled how it sounds. And we can connect kind of a bunch of ways. But yeah, email, social media, all good ways to reach out and connect.
And maybe you can help get me in shape going forward. Somebody said they're trying to lose their Christmas fat. And I said, I'm trying to lose my baby fat.
Yeah.
So,
I can help you with that, Brian.
yeah, I know
We'll get you where you want to go, man.
yeah, I know you can.
Yep.
I've been following you, buddy, so I might need
Yeah.
the help.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. We'll take care of you.
All right. Well, thanks for jumping on, everybody, on a Friday. And Colin, we'll look forward to a continued great relationship and good time, good weekend, everybody.
All right.
Thank you so much.